The fog rolled in thicker than usual that evening, blanketing the jagged shores of Innsmouth in an almost suffocating veil. David Calloway, a scholar of ancient texts, arrived in the decaying port town with a growing sense of unease. He had come after receiving a letter from his friend, Ethan Moore, who had lived in self-imposed exile there for the last 5 years. The letter was hurried, cryptic, and desperate. It spoke of strange voices, shadows lurking in the sea, and of something ancient that should have remained buried. David wasn't one to believe in such nonsense. Ethan had always been a man drawn to the unknown, to the strange and the forbidden. But the tone of this letter chilled him to his core. There was a weight to it, a fear. And so, David had come. He had to see for himself. Innsmouth greeted him with an eerie stillness. The streets were quiet, almost lifeless, as if the town itself was holding its breath. The few people he encountered shuffled past him with downcast eyes, avoiding his gaze as though they carried a secret they dared not share. Something was wrong with this place. He could feel it in his bones. Ethan's home lay on the outskirts of town, perched on a cliff overlooking the restless sea. The house loomed in the mist like a forgotten relic, its windows dark, its facade weathered by the salty air. David's footsteps echoed against the cobblestone path as he approached. But there was something else. A faint murmur, almost imperceptible, like the ocean itself was whispering to him. He pushed open the heavy door, which creaked on its hinges, and stepped inside. The house was cold, silent. Ethan's presence, once lively and full of eccentric charm, was nowhere to be found. The only sign of him was a crumpled letter lying on an old desk, ink smeared in a hurried scrawl.
The abyss. The voices. What have you gotten yourself into, Ethan?
The letter mentioned an ancient manuscript, one Ethan had discovered in the old church, hidden beneath the town in a network of catacombs. It warned of something he called the Whisperer, a being that spoke from the depths of the abyss, a place that, according to local legend, lay far beneath the waves. David's heart raced as he made his way through the winding streets toward the dilapidated church. The building was barely standing, its stone walls crumbling, overtaken by moss and time. Inside, the air was thick with dampness, and the distant sound of dripping water echoed through the dark halls. Descending into the catacombs beneath the church, David's lantern flickered, casting long shadows against the stone walls. The deeper he went, the more the air seemed to hum, a low vibration that set his teeth on edge. At last he found it, an old weathered tome, bound in what appeared to be ancient skin, covered in symbols he couldn't understand. But the moment his fingers touched the tome, it began. The whispering, faint at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, then louder, clearer, words in a language he could not comprehend. The voice was not human. It pulled at him, urged him deeper into the catacombs. And like a man possessed, he followed, unable to resist the strange compulsion that had taken hold of him. The walls of the tunnels grew darker, more twisted, as if they themselves were alive. And then at last he stood before it, the abyss, a great black pit yawning before him like the mouth of some unspeakable creature. The whispering grew louder, deafening, as if the very darkness itself was speaking to him, calling to him. And in that moment, David saw it. Something vast, something ancient, stirring in the depths. A presence older than time itself that had been waiting for someone like him. His mind screamed to turn away, to flee, but his body would not obey. The thing in the abyss had marked him. He was no longer his own. He tried to close his eyes, but it was too late. The last thing he saw before the world faded to black was the eye. David Calloway was never seen again. The people of Innsmouth returned to their daily lives as though nothing had happened, though from time to time they spoke in hushed tones of strange dreams, of whispers on the wind, and of the sea, which seemed to rise and fall with a new and terrible rhythm. The old church remains abandoned, its doors sealed. But on quiet nights, when the fog is thick and the wind is still, if you listen closely near the cliffs of Innsmouth, you might just hear it, the whisper from the abyss, calling to those foolish enough to listen.